Well, he admitted that he killed his wife and her lover. In fact, while he was testifying about his involvement in their murders, Ali Abulaban said he was shooting and couldn't stop. Doesn't anybody listen to their lawyers anymore and assume their right to self-incrimination?
I see her kissing Ray on my couch with his feet on my table. With I'm getting my house in my way in the house that my daughter's sleeping in on the furniture that I put together. How do you expect a man to feel?
Well, the murder case of Anna Abulaban and Ray Barron at the alleged hands of Anna's estranged husband, Ali Abulaban, is at its core another story about domestic violence. So as this thing is moving into the closing statements, I want to discuss the difference between premeditated murder and murder resulting from a heat of passion. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks for taking a moment to hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell. Remember that you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Now we're talking about the TikTok star Jin Kid, and this guy is accused of murdering his wife Anna and her boyfriend, a guy named Ray Barron. Well, hello everybody. Hey, now murder is one of the most severe criminal offenses in our legal system. However, not all murders are considered equal under the law. So I want to chat about the double murder trial of Ali Abulaban, accused of murdering his wife and her new companion. My hope is to explain the difference between the different degrees of culpability found in premeditated murder and murder as a result of a crime of passion. In its most basic form, premeditated murder involves the intentional killing of another person after careful planning and consideration. It's characterized by the perpetrator's deliberate and conscious decision to commit the act. It's usually classified as a first-degree murder or the highest level. Now, crimes of passion, on the other hand, are typically classified as voluntary manslaughter. These occur when a person kills another person in a sudden fit of rage. They just completely lose it. They have these intense emotions provoked by the circumstances that would cause a reasonable person to lose self-control. The act itself is very impulsive, with no prior intent to kill. And that's really the core of this entire discussion that we're having today, is whether there was prior intent to commit these murders. As we begin this discussion in the Abulaban case, remember, this is a popular TikTok creator with more than 1 million followers. He went by the name of Jin Kid. It's important to understand that there also has been a history of domestic violence in the relationship that he had with his wife. This is the mother of his child, and that child has witnessed those abuses according to documents that are coming out in court. In fact, the prosecution brought out how Abulaban had repeatedly beat his wife, and on one occasion, her injuries were recorded and those were shared in the courtroom as well. So let's listen to his testimony in court yesterday, which got pretty dang heated. And then I'm going to refer to a video from a news report in a few minutes.
You hated Ray from the first night you met him, right?
I did not hate Ray.
Ray disrespected you, right?
Of course.
You don't like being disrespected, right?
No.
After your second trip to San Diego, you hated Ray even more, right?
I did not hate Ray.
You talked about another time where you hung out with him and, he didn't want to be your friend, right?
No, I spoke about the second time I saw him at the party. I got him a beer and sat down with him and attempted to have a civil conversation.
Okay. And you didn't like him, though, after that, right?
No, I had decided that he's not interested in a friendship with me. He's interested in Anna.
Right, so you talked about your move to San Diego, and you're basically telling everyone that it was solely Anna that wanted to move, right?
Initially, but I was open to the idea as well.
Because you wanted to come to the West Coast and promote your Gin Kid brand, right?
I saw that it was it would open a door for me to go to LA easier.
You were interested in the limelight, right?
Sure.
Right, and media attention
Sure.
and fame,
Sure.
okay? And you're an actor, right? That's what you did,
Content creator.
Right.
I wanted to be an actor.
right? But you did a lot of impressions, right?
Yes.
You're a good actor, right?
To a certain degree, but not good enough to be in a movie. Well, I don't think.
Okay. And so you also were interested in being here because that would help your career, right?
Being where?
Being on the West Coast.
Oh, I thought it'd be easier to collaborate with LA content creators. Yes.
But you're blaming Anna as like the sole reason, as the person who dragged you here, but you wanted to be here, right?
No, I did want to be here. What I said was that Anna, she put pressure on me to make the move exactly when we did. I had suggested not that we cancel the idea, but that we just put it on hold so I could be there for my brother and my family.
But again, you wanted to be here, right?
Sure.
You're happy to be here.
Yes, I like San Diego.
And once you moved to San Diego, you continued being violent with Anna, right?
No,
No?
no.
But you testified multiple times yesterday that you were violent with her on many occasions.
Down the road, I mean, once things started to get bad, yes.
In July of 2021, your sister Shireen was visiting you, right?
Yes,
Okay. She was staying at the apartment with you and Anna
Yes.
and Amira, right?
yes,
And you punched Anna in the face, right?
yes,
Multiple times, right?
yes.
You continued attacking Anna until Shireen came in, right?
No,
Okay. So July 21st, 2021, you caused those injuries to Anna's face, right?
I did.
Okay. You gave her a huge bump on her face, right?
Yes,
Gave her cuts near her eye.
yes.
And then days later, her whole face turned black, right?
No,
You saw her a day or two later, right?
it didn't turn black, but it looked like that.
Yeah, so she still had injuries, right?
Yes,
Her face was swollen.
yes,
Your sister Shireen wanted to call 911, right?
I believe so.
And you told her not to, right?
I offered to leave instead.
You told your sister Shireen not to call 911 after you punched Anna in the face, right?
I did.
Okay? And you told Anna not to call the police too, right?
I believe so.
Because you didn't want to be arrested, right?
Right,
You deserved to be arrested for what you did, right?
sure.
But you didn't want it to affect your life. That's what you testified to yesterday, right?
It was a sudden thing, and
Mr. Abulaban, answer the question, please. You didn't want this conduct to affect your life, right?
I didn't want it to have permanent implications, yes.
Right.
The facts of this case seem pretty simple to me. Abulaban was estranged from his wife, Anna, who had a new man in her life, a guy named Ray Barone. Now, she had physically separated from Ali, the defendant, and she was living in their San Diego apartment with their daughter. Now, unbeknownst to Anna, her husband had secretly installed a listening app on his daughter's iPad so that when she was back home with her mother, he could listen in to what was going on in the house. Kind of gives you a sense of the paranoia and the feelings that were going on there. Now, I'm unsure how long he monitored this app, but he testified personally that he would listen to Anna's conversations in the home without her knowledge. During their separation, Ollie had moved into a hotel room, and I don't know exactly how far it was away from the apartment. And I think that's pretty important because of the travel time it would have taken to get there. His wife remained in their apartment in a San Diego high-rise. So let's take this whole story now, and let's go back to the day of the murder, which was October 21st, 2021. Ollie was home ingesting cocaine, and he was eavesdropping on his wife's conversations. He heard another man's voice in the background, a guy named Ray Barone. And I think I got his last name pronounced right. It's either Barron or Barone, but I've heard most people say Barone. So please forgive me if I've got that wrong. But Barone was in his wife's house. Now, he had long suspected that the two were having an affair, and he held Ray Barone personally responsible for his marriage falling apart. I was intrigued to learn yesterday by the prosecutor that in court he announced that Anna had texted Ali just hours before the murder saying, quote, "I want you out of my life once and for all," close quote. Well, apparently there had also been repeated episodes of domestic violence in the couple's history. These included battery, and those batteries were pretty aggressive when you look at the pictures of the bruising on her face and the swelling on her face. These came out in court, and I think they really kind of brought home how bad the domestic violence was. But instead of being angry with the fact that their marriage was falling apart and that they had no longer become compatible, he was focused on this new built boyfriend, and he was building a narrative in his mind that the boyfriend, Barone, was responsible for the marriage falling apart. Well, as Abulaban sat in his hotel room listening to his wife and Barone inside, he grew angrier and angrier. Now, he continued to ingest cocaine, and when his anger hit this boiling point, he grabbed a handgun that he had, and he drove to his wife's home. Once there, he entered her residence, and he killed Ray Barone by shooting him multiple times in the face and in the head. Now, he did this first, I believe, so that his wife could see what was happening. He then killed his wife by shooting her in the middle of the forehead. A horrific crime scene. Now, prosecutors spoke about the crime scene and indicated that in their determination, Abulaban also posed the bodies, and he left a signature there. The signature, several bullets that he ejected from the weapon after he had murdered the two individuals. He left two of those bullets between her legs at where he had apparently posed her, and 3 rounds were found on the ground. The sound of the argument and the gunshots were captured on neighbors' closed-circuit television or like a doorbell camera. So let's keep things fairly simple at this stage of our discussion. And I want to go back. Think about this. Abulaban is consuming cocaine at his home, so he's already not in a clear state of mind. But he's becoming enraged over his wife's perceived infidelity. Now, the prosecutor brought out the fact that he had also been doing some research online that would suggest that he was preparing to commit murder. Now, he'd been trained as a police officer in the military, so he understood how to shoot a weapon. And he had enough time to grab his weapon, perhaps even taking time to load it, although I suspect he kept it loaded in his home, and he drove to her apartment. Once there, he had enough time to park his vehicle, to exit that vehicle and enter the apartment complex, and take a 3-minute elevator ride to her floor before exiting the elevator and going to her apartment door. In fact, he carried on some light conversation with a woman in the apartment, seeming very engaging at the time. He went to the door, confronted the couple, and then committed the homicides. In fact, according to testimony that's come out and looking at the crime scene footage, the defendant walked in, found the couple sitting on the couch, and let me repeat this, he found them sitting on the couch, not engaged in anything, and he pointed the gun at Ray Barone and shot him 3 times in the head. Now again, I suspect that this was a power play and he wanted her to witness this if everything is accurate. He probably, after shooting Ray, had short conversation, and that is backed up a little bit by audio and some testimony, and then he shot her, executing her, shooting her in the middle of the forehead. So in essence, both were executed, and according to the prosecutors, it was then that he posed her on top of her lover. Now, this is an important piece of information in regard to premeditated murder cases. Premeditated murder cases are often a pre-planned event with a pre-planned exit strategy, an action to put in place to avoid responsibility. Now, Abulaban called 911, but first he called his mother about 4 minutes after the murder. And then about 10 or 12 minutes after, he called 911, stating that he went into his wife's apartment where he found her and her friend dead on the floor. He didn't say he shot them and immediately left the apartment. He said he found them, kind of freaked out, and left. From there, he went to his daughter's school and picked her up and took her in the car, informing her that he had actually hurt Mommy. The child was actually in the Jeep when police stopped the vehicle shortly after the murders. And again, keep in mind, the prosecution suggested to the court that Abulaban's plan was to take the daughter to the mother's house, and then he was going to flee and go on the lam, I guess. Well, let's take a minute and share some of the comments I made on Court TV with Julie Grant as this defendant was testifying in his own behalf. And I want to thank Julie for inviting me to join her on the discussion.
What a dirtbag this guy is, an admitted wife beater, an admitted killer, and he's trying to work his way out of the allegation that these murders were premeditated. I don't think this guy has a prayer in doing that. Let me bring in my guest, see what he thinks. He's a retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Commander Mike King on the show. Good morning, Mike. Nice to see you. This case is just so infuriating, as this guy just strikes me as the classic batterer. He is narcissistic, he's abusive, and he's trying to charm the cross-examiner, as we can see, trying to be calm, trying to be cool and collected when he acted like a maniac, murdering his beautiful wife and her friend. Now, Commander, a couple facts that I think there's just no way this guy can get around them, no matter how good of an actor he is. He put a listening app on his daughter's iPad so he could spy on his wife, and became enraged when he heard Ray Barron's voice through the app coming from the apartment. And then he gets his gun, maybe loads it, maybe he kept it loaded, who knows, gets his gun, takes it, goes over to the apartment and carries out these homicides. Do you think there's any way in the world this guy can say that he didn't premeditate that, when we know how fast premeditation can happen, Commander?
Well, exactly. And I think that's the key, Julie, that you're bringing out so eloquently, is the fact that premeditation is a lot different than a heat of passion, where all of a sudden I grab something next to me because I'm out of my mind and I react. But there's pre-planning here. Not only is there this, and I love the verbal and nonverbal behavior that's going on in the courtroom right now, because we're seeing him establish this kind of calm and presence, and that, hey, things were just kind of slowly building. But that isn't the case. Just as you outlined, when you go in and you put an app on because you are paranoid and you want to understand what's going on, and you're listening in on people's conversations, and that triggers your next move, which is the next move is to grab your gun. Whether you load it or not, it doesn't matter, because he has to transit from his location to her location. That's a whole lot of time to go from heat of passion to let me think through what I'm doing and get there and make a decision like this. I also love this idea that we talk about a lot on your show, Julie, of the idea of past behavior is predictive of future behavior. He's already laid the groundwork that he has battering, or it's all about me and you are impacting my life negatively, and I'm going to bring you in line. All of these factors together, I think, Julie, are really pointing to a big, tall mountain for him to climb.
You're right, Commander. And something else you pointed out that is such an important distinction when we talk about what you were saying, the heat of passion versus a premeditated murder, is that cooling off period that you identified. He had time to cool off. If there's any way under the law that you can argue heat of passion, you can't have time to cool down. and he's not in that location, which means he had time to cool down. So to your point, Commander, there's distance here. It's not like he was there present and opened a door and saw something and suddenly it happened that fast. No, it didn't. Commander, there's so much more I want to show you and talk about. We just have to hit our first break of the hour. Stand by.
So with that interview and discussion in mind, let's think about the hallmark elements of premeditated murder. The element of planning, first and foremost. This planning can vary from a few moments to years as far as the pre-planning, but it involves a conscious decision to carry out a murder. Now, in this case, Abulaban put together this plan, perhaps under the influence of narcotics. Clearly, he was under the influence of cocaine at the time, but he put together a plan. Now, his previous behavior would suggest that he was certainly capable of inflicting harm on his wife. He admitted it in court, although he had the audacity to suggest that he was always good enough to apologize to her each time he did it. He figured that was a good starting point, but he continued to repeat the process. Now, to fit this idea of premeditated murder, there has to be a clear intent to kill somebody. In other words, Abulaban needed to consider the gravity of the offense and still decide to go through with it. Now, keep in mind, this guy had served as a military police officer. He understood law. He understood what's right and wrong. He understood the impact of pointing a weapon at someone, let alone firing it. And he certainly understood the intent behind putting a gun to somebody's head and firing it. It causes death in almost every case. Now, in this case, the evidence suggests, and this is supported by Abulaban's own confession, that he grabbed his loaded weapon. He drove to her apartment. He parked his car. He went up the elevator. He went to her door. He broke in, he shot, and he killed them both. To me, that's a pretty clear and concise intent to go through with a murder, and in this case, a double murder. Now, if we were to kind of flip to the other side of this scale, in crimes of passion, the act of murder is usually triggered by some kind of a provocative event that would cause a reasonable person to lose control. Now, courts have included the discovery of infidelity as one of those passion provocations. But here's the real kicker, or the real standard that needs to be met. There cannot be any significant amount of time for the perpetrator to cool off between coming to an understanding there was a problem and acting out. And I think this is going to be the real issue that's at play here in this particular case. The response has to be immediate, and it's driven by this intense emotion. Well, if we go back and look at all the evidence that's coming out, this thing was building. It was building to the point that he was putting listening apps on. He was concerned. It was building to the point that he believed that his marriage was in jeopardy. It was building to the point that she said, "I don't want anything more to do with you." It was building to the point that he was researching information online, according to prosecutors. It was building to the point that he loaded a gun or took a loaded gun and he went to her apartment. It was building to the point that he actually drove that distance, however long, that he could have calmed down and thought to himself, "What am I doing?" It built to the point that he was consuming more cocaine as he was traveling to her residence, that he had time during the time he was parking or walking into the apartment building or taking that 3-minute elevator ride upstairs, that he could have said, "What on earth am I doing?" There was adequate cool down period, in my opinion, that could have caused him to rethink this. So this equates, in my mind, to a whole bunch of time passing, and I think it's going to negatively impact his defense that this was a heat of passion crime. No, this was premeditated from everything that's coming out, in my opinion. And what I believe has clearly come out in court, and what I've tried to lay out as facts of the case, isn't going to support the idea that this was impulsive and not premeditative. Now, this doesn't mean that Abulaban may not have been thinking unclearly. I mean, he admittedly said he was under the influence of cocaine, and he testified that once he started shooting, he couldn't stop. So let's watch this video clip of some of his testimony for a moment.
Moments inside the courtroom today as testimony wrapped up in the double murder trial involving a former TikTok star. It's our top story on the 4. I'm Heather Myers.
I'm Carlo Cicchetto. Ali Abulaban took the stand in his own defense for a 3rd day in a row. He's charged with killing his wife, Anna, and her friend, Ray Barone.
CBS 8 Shannon Handy was inside the courtroom all afternoon. She joins us live now with the very latest. Shannon.
Yeah, Heather and Carlo, the prosecution spent the majority of the day cross-examining Abulaban, and it was during that time that we witnessed several of those tense moments. Now, I'm going to play 2 of them for you. Take a listen.
I'm asking you a question.
Because all I heard was,
You cannot ask me anything. I'm asking you. Before you shot Anna in the head, you said respect to her.
I did not say that.
And you shot her because she had disrespected you and was with Ray, correct?
No.
Right after you shot Anna in the head, you pushed her head down into Ray's lap, right?
Oh, I'm not going to tolerate this.
On October 18th, you were also researching teen porn videos, correct?
What? What did you just say?
That's what you were researching, correct?
Say it again?
Teen porn videos.
You're out your mind.
Okay.
Show me the teen you just said. You want to paint me some kind of child molester? Show me what show me. What you just said. I've never seen that in a discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years. You never showed that to my team. Where did you get that?
Now, that first interaction was over allegations Abulaban yelled respect when shooting Anna and Barone and then manipulated their bodies. The second one happened when the prosecution was questioning Abulaban about things he reportedly searched on his phone in the weeks and days leading up to the shooting, among them to bodies and trash cans. The prosecution is trying to prove Abulaban planned to kill Anna and Barone, but Abulaban's defense has maintained this was a crime of passion. The killings happened in October of 2021 at the Spire high-rise building in East Village. During his testimony yesterday, Abulaban said he snapped when he saw Anna and Barone together cuddling on a couch, which led him to shoot and kill them both. He also testified he had no intention of killing them. Abulaban called his mom just 4 minutes after the shooting, yet waited 12 minutes to call 911. Prosecutor Taryn Brass asked him about that.
You never did a single thing to help her inside the apartment, correct?
I didn't think I was capable of it. I didn't know how to.
You did not do a single thing to help her, right?
No.
You did not call 911 inside the apartment after you shot and killed Anna and Ray, correct?
Not immediately, no.
And also today, following the lunch break, the defense asked for a mistrial, saying some of the questions coming from the prosecution were misleading and insinuated things he did not do. The judge denied that request, but they spent several minutes discussing this issue. Now, trial will resume tomorrow with closing arguments. Carlo and Heather.
And Shannon, before they wrapped up testimony, we know the defense had the chance to redirect testimony. Did we learn anything from that?
No, nothing really new, Carlo. This is what we've heard over the past few days since Abulaban has been on the stand. They basically said, did you plan to kill them? He said no. He said his state of mind was just a marriage that was falling apart, and he was, quote, freaking out over his wife and this potential affair with another man. And then when he walked in and saw them, again, as I mentioned, he just snapped. So nothing new. It was just repeating things that he has already said over the last few days since he's been on the stand.
All right, another dramatic day in the courtroom. Shannon Handy reporting live from downtown. Shannon, thanks.
At this point, I think Abulaban is doing the only thing that he and his defense team can do in court, short of pleading guilty. He's hoping that he might somehow get a lesser conviction of manslaughter. So kind of consider this. Typically, premeditated murder is charged as a first-degree murder charge, the most serious level of homicide. In those kinds of cases, his only defense, other than he was acting in a heat of passion, would be to provide some kind of an alibi, something that said he wasn't there. But we know he was through confession and forensic evidence, through CCTV cameras. Now, he could also claim insanity, or he could challenge the state's evidence of premeditation, something that they're trying to do as part of this claim that this was a crime of passion. If this guy's found guilty, he's likely to face the harshest penalties of all, including life in prison. Well, as Julie Grant and I wound up our discussion on this case, we shifted our thoughts to the core problem that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And that is, this is another example of domestic violence. In this case, domestic violence homicide. Let's watch this segment with Julie.
I will tell you, statistics show that the most dangerous time for a woman or a man when they're exiting a violent relationship is when the batterer is losing control. And that's what's happened here. She distanced herself from him. And then he began feeling that loss of the power and the control. I'm going to bring in someone who knows so much about domestic violence, retired police commander and the host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Mike, I can't help but want to share some good, solid safety information on a subject that is really important. I like to talk about it because it's uncomfortable, and I don't think it's talked about enough, and I want people to know it's very common. 10 million adults in America this past year were in a violent situation with their intimate partner. So if you're watching this at home and this is you, you're not alone. Commander, some of the things you can think about that can be done to distance yourself from a batterer safely so that you remain safe and not subject to a potential assault, or even one that it was fatal, like what we saw in this case with Anna and her friend Ray Barron.
Yeah, Julie, I just, it's so disappointing because we have to continually return to this discussion on domestic violence and the cycle that occurs in these situations where at times the victim in these cases tries to go through a reconciliation process. There's a little bit of a warm-up period and things seem like they're going to be okay, but the same behaviors continue to return in this dominion, control, this power phase that the abuser goes through. And sometimes these cases are two-way. But the thing that's so compelling to me in this case, Julie, is the fact that it really looks like she was doing the things that she needed to do to start this separation process. She got an apartment on her own. She had her daughter there. She's trying to work out a way for him to have access to his daughter, although I'm wondering what access he really wanted, because it seemed like he wanted more the control and the obedience that he had been able to establish earlier. But then she's going through apparently a period where she's trying to look at the idea of protective orders, and it's just so sad that the protective order wasn't put in place sooner, although I don't know that it would have changed what we saw unfold, because we see this preparatory phase, we see this buildup, we see this anger start happening, and then him traveling over there. And so I think she was doing the things that were right, but it didn't make a difference because he was spying on her. He was doing things to make sure that he maintained control. And this is all about him. I mean, the solar system is revolving around him, and he was losing control.
You're exactly right, Commander Mike King. Thank you so much for weighing in on this story. We'll look forward to having you back on Court TV very soon. Take good care.
Well, folks, I'd really like to know your thoughts on this particular case. I wonder how you'd be voting if you were sitting on the jury in this double murder case right now before the closing statements come in. Now, you'd be doing this understanding there's a difference between premeditated murder and murder as a cause from crimes of passion. This is crucial for the legal system to administer justice appropriately. Now, both of these crimes involve the tragic loss of life, but the degree of intent and emotional context play significant roles in determining the severity of the charges that Ali Abulaban needs to face. I hope that this helps you recognize these distinctions, and I'd like to recommend that you go back and listen to one of my previous videos with Dr. Jane Moncton on domestic violence homicide. I hope it's something that you'd share with your friends and your loved ones. And make sure that you're tuning in for the closing arguments in this case. They're coming right up. Personally, I don't think this one's going to take the jury very long to come up with a decision that this was premeditated murder, but I'd like your opinion. Hey, and remember that you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and I hope that you're taking enough time to hit that subscribe button over here. Make sure you're ringing the bell and sharing us with your friends. And by all means, folks, if you like audio podcasts, I hope that you're signing up for Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.